Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video, and in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Ruddock versus Toney fight. If you are new around here though and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So of course this fight is an exhibition fight. It's one which some people are here for, some people aren't here for, but I'm not going to go too in depth with the kind of whole explanation of it. I'll do what I normally do, but of course everybody's going to know that this fight is between two legends of the sport, but two fighters which are definitely not going to be the fighter which they once were. I'm going to speak about them in their prime and the positives and negatives of them in their prime, but I'm also going to try and weigh up in the process that neither of them are in their prime anymore, and neither of them are really going to be much near that, but they might still have little things available to them, little techniques which I'm sure they will know from experience and everything like that, and so there might still be things there to go off for this. In my opinion, I'm not going to say too much in if I think this should be happening or not. There's positives, of course. It's a legends fight. It's bringing boxing to Jamaica. It's Ruddock returning to his kind of homeland, but like I mentioned, it's two fighters which are on definitely the older side of things, and it's at a point where I don't know how much of a fan I am of them fighting, but I'm still here to do a prediction nonetheless. So, getting into it, Ruddock is 46-1 with 30 KOs, and Toney is 77, 10-3 with 47 KOs, and also to mention he's 0-1 in MMA. Toney's last fight was a win via KO in round 6 versus Shepherd back in 2017, and Ruddock's last fight was a loss via KO in round 3 versus Carmen back in 2015. So what, Toney not fighting in 6 years and Ruddock not fighting in 8 years. This fight is an exhibition fight, so there's definitely still that kind of thing there of if it goes to the judges. I don't even know if there will be judges. I don't know if it's going to get scored. I doubt they will even be given a winner if it does go all the way. And this is also a heavyweight fight. Of course, Toney fighting over many weights throughout his time, but he's now heavyweight, fighting at heavyweight here. Ruddock is 59 and Toney is 55 years of age. Ruddock, I believe only a couple months off being 60, is stepping back into the ring. It is dangerous. I understand the whole kind of aspect of it being dangerous and what the sport is, and how going in and stepping in at this age probably isn't the smartest thing, and really something that I should be condoning or fighters should be condoning, but nonetheless it's happening. Ruddock is 6'3" and Toney is 5'9". Ruddock has an 82-inch reach compared to Toney having a 72-inch reach. Toney is the former IBF middleweight, super middleweight and cruiserweight champion. Of course, Toney's always been the kind of smaller fighter, and I suppose that's why he's been able to have such successes in multi different weight categories. I mean, when he was fighting at middleweight, maybe he wasn't always the smallest fighter, but now he's been moving up, and when he was fighting at cruiserweight, he was always the smallest fighter, and so he's used to that really. Ruddock always being the taller fighter, always being the, even in the heavyweight division, to be fair, he was always a fighter which had a long reach and was always really imposing that. So another thing that he's kind of used to. Of course, Toney being that multi-weight champion is just legend kind of status really. Of course, Ruddock is a legend as well, fighting the likes of Mike Tyson twice in 2 amazing fights, and also fighting Lennox Lewis in the process as well. Of course, none of them really going his way, but still huge fights, as well as doing so well in his career. And I mean, even having his own kind of punch named after him to an extent, or named for it by him, which I'll get onto now. So Ruddock as a fighter, he hits from all angles. He's aggressive. He was naturally powerful. Puts his all into his shots. He's a front foot type fighter. He's got solid counters, set traps well, had shot variations. He was unorthodox, had good timing, and of course he was the more natural of the heavyweight compared to that of Toney. When I say hit from all angles, I feel like everybody knows that iconic smash shot that he kind of named, and that was such a new thing and was just amazing to see, and that natural power was just stopping so many fighters when he was coming up, and throughout his whole career that power was for a lot of fighters. And during a period of heavyweights where pretty much all the heavyweights were powerful, he was one of the ones that really stood out for being that guy who was one of the most powerful out of them all. And the fact he always put his everything into his shots, and to be fair, the fact that he did set traps as well, he was quite composed at times and really waited to set up the shot, and then waited for you to come in, and then timed it well with his shots. And so, you know, he was not just the kind of certain heavyweights were back then, and to be fair, even now, where they just come in recklessly and wildly and don't really have much control in their attacks and just hope for a big stoppage from a big punch landing. He did set up his shots well and did really time them well, and of course had that natural power as well. Negatives about him was, I mean, he often dropped his guard to do his shots, to initiate his shots. He dropped his guard a lot. He was open to counters, had quite a bit of a low output. On the back foot, he did struggle a bit. He could wait too long to throw his shots. He could be bullied. It was rare, but Mike Tyson, and I mean, it's fair enough, it's Tyson, and to be fair, Lennox did it, but I would more say Tyson, especially in that second fight. He really did bully him and push him around the ring. He does get hit. He will stand front on, face on often. He was not overly technical. He struggled a bit fighting on the inside. He kind of more liked to keep his jab out to an extent and keep a bit of a distance between them because of that long reach. And he did sometimes get outworked, and that was also seen in the Tyson fight and in a couple of other fights as well. But, you know, like I said, you can't really go off it too much. I'm sure there's also going to be the tiring factor for both fighters, which is something which is going to be a very much a big thing a big factor to play. I'm not overly sure how many rounds this is, to be honest. I probably should have looked at that before doing this. Do I think it would go all the rounds? Possibly. I think if it does, it would be a bit sloppy and a bit messy by the end. I mean, it might be sloppy and messy to start off with, but I don't know if it will go all the rounds, because I feel like there is still that kind of power aspect from both fighters. Speaking about Toney now, so he is counterpuncher, had a good chin. He was fluid in his motions. He outboxed fighters often. He carried power as well. He was tough, elusive, a defensive fighter, a close range fighter at that. Composed, controlled the tempo, was accurate, had good timing, set up off the jab, back foot fighter, had solid head movement, very good head movement, and also rolled it with the punches very well. He had good shot selection, he found the angles very well, and overall he was a different fighter to that of what was around at the time. The fact that he was able to just kind of stand in the pocket, and then also in the time maybe not be as aggressive and as wild, and he was still powerful, but that power just came from the fact that he was just catching people when they weren't really expecting it. And the fact that he was able to stand in the pocket and not really move away from that, but also just not get hit that much, was really impressive. Like, there were certain fighters and certain fights where he just was hardly getting hit at all, and it's like, why not? Because he is stood right in front of you, but you see what he's doing, the little movements he's doing, the little rolls, the little feints, the little head bobs. It was just very impressive to watch as a fighter, and that was why he had so much success, because it was just so different to that of a round of that kind of time period. And I think it was Holyfield that said it after their fight, he was just so elusive to hit, even though he was right in front of you. He was somebody who was just such a good defensive fighter with amazing counters, and of course, I mean, even when he did take a shot, he had a good chin in the process as well, and could take a good shot as well. And there wasn't also, like I mentioned, many fighters that were willing to fight on the back foot and were good to fight on the back foot, unlike that of Toney, who was more welcoming of that to an extent and did thrive on the back foot. And yeah, so maybe there was fights where certain rounds he was losing them because he was on the back foot, but then he was just able to switch the momentum and really kind of control the tempo, like I mentioned. And yeah, he was an amazing fighter. And negatives about him to an extent, I will say he lacks discipline, not necessarily in the ring, but outside the ring there was lots of things that he did in his prime where he was going out and stuff like that, and I'm not going to go too much into it, but I feel like possibly that could have stopped maybe not longevity, because he's still fighting now, but it could have maybe halted him to an extent during his prime days. he could sometimes get a bit too comfortable when he's just doing so well on the back foot and really not getting hit. He just got a bit too comfortable, and then occasionally he did get hit. His speed was never really crazily good. I mean, he had fast counters, but his actual kind of body speed was never crazy. He could sometimes punch a bit from afar. If he ever did go out of range, he wasn't amazing if it was a kind of controlled distance, a controlled mid-range distance between them. He did get pushed back. I mean, like I said, he was kind of willing to. Of course, he will tire. I mean, he tired during his fights in the heyday, but he's going to definitely tire now. His lateral movement was never amazing, and it's slowing, and I doubt there'll really be much of it in this fight. And he's very heavy-footed in this process as well, and will sometimes also stand straight on in the process. Like I mentioned, you can't really look too much deep into these type of fights, but they're entertaining to an extent. I hope everybody makes out of the ring fine and all good, and I hope they also get to show some good Jamaican talent in the undercard as well, and because like I mentioned, there's not really many cards that really go over that and shine a light on their talent, and so I hope that does. And then I hope this fight is a good fight. I hope that both fighters show what they want to show for a final hurrah and really just make it out alright. Toney is the favourite. I think that Toney will win via stoppage in round 2. That stoppage could be whatever, possibly a TKO, possibly just referee wanting to get involved, and I wouldn't hate that if the referee does get involved and stop it, even if it's possibly seen as early, because you want to protect these guys and they need to be protected for their own safety to an extent. But I think like Toney's power, his elusiveness, and not even just that, I feel like he would just stand in the ring, and I think he's the guy who, of course, he's the younger guy in the process as well, and I feel like he still carries power. Ruddock has that power, but I've seen some recent stuff of him, and he doesn't really look amazing. It doesn't really look like as much in his shots anymore. Toney still feels like there's not really much speed or kind of movement, but he's willing to stand in the pocket and just throw a couple bombs before possibly he gets tired, and so yeah, I feel like there possibly will be a stoppage in round 2, and then where would they go on to next? Retirement, hopefully. Hopefully that's the case. I wouldn't really be wanting to see them fight too much longer, or really longer at all. But like I said, I'm still here for the fight, as long as, like I also said, they both make it out alright. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you enjoy. Like if you did, like video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.